Welcome back to session 3 of Unit 3. So in session 3, we are going to look at behavioral learning theories. So by the end of this session, we should be able to explain the meaning and the nature of consumer behavior learning, identify the basic elements of learning, describe the process of behavioral learning, distinguish between classical conditioning and instrumental conditioning, discuss the marketing application of classical conditioning, and discuss the marketing application of instrumental conditioning. Now, the meaning and the nature of learning. So, what we are doing right now, we are learning, right? Yeah, so we are learning. So, what is the meaning and how is learning being cultured or is being situated? So, the nature of learning is just literal. There are different forms and different ways that individuals or even consumers they learn about a particular product, service, or anything of any sort. So we are saying that learning is in context of marketing basically looks at consumer learning and may be considered as the process by which individuals acquire the purchase and consumption knowledge and experience that they apply to future related behavior. So in the context of consumer, learning may be considered as the process by which individuals acquire the purchase. So if you want to buy something, the process that the consumer actually go through in acquiring or purchasing that particular product and consuming that particular knowledge is what you call learning. So before you buy something, you sometimes want to go and read what you call previews or probably customer previews. You want to go online and see what people are saying about a particular product. A typical person that have never used an iPhone before that want to buy an iPhone, probably the person may want to search. The person would want to learn so that he or she will not make a mistake. The person will not go and then buy what do you call it, soap to the house. So that is learning. Every consumer would want to learn so that he or she will not make a mistake. You go to Circle and they give you, you think that you have bought an iPhone. By the time you get to the house, you want to wash your thing and you go and take your phone to use, you realize that it's rather soap and you tend to use it to wash your things. So that is basically what learning actually entails. Now, there are several points to note in this definition. So you realize that learning is a process, right? It's not just an event. It is not just a one-time thing. It's a process. So as you are moving along and all that, you tend to learn or embrace certain ideas or knowledge. There are certain people, they buy something because they are limited in terms of knowledge. So they are in the process of them getting that knowledge, they tend to have a different perception of that product. And by the time you realize, the person will say that now I'm not an iPhone user. But initially, the same person is saying that me, I'm addicted to iPhone. I can't use any other phone apart from iPhone. But in the course of the process, the thoughts may change. And again, much learning is intentional. Yes, majority of the learning process is something that you need to intentionally or you need to purport. If you don't intentionally do that, you cannot learn. So learning, even in our context of our education, if you don't make the intention to learn, there is no way you can pass. There is no way you can pass. And even within the passes, you have different grades. So it is up to you to make that intention to decide that I want A, or probably I want a B plus, or maybe I want a B. So the grades are all there. And again, consumers in context to, it's up to consumers to make that intention, or they should purport to actually take into consideration a lot of effort to what? Learn about a particular product. Because the more you learn about that particular product, the more knowledge you gain, and you can make a conclusion or you can make decision as to whether that product will actually satisfy you. That's why there are at times people they see certain things online and they do, because they don't take their time to learn a lot about online trading. They'll go and see anything online, they order, and by the time the thing comes, it looks like, I remember somebody bought a sofa, and then now when the sofa arrived in Ghana, the person can even handle the sofa in the palm. So that is it. So learning is supposed to be intentional. Majority of the learning activity is now the basic elements of learning. So every learning activity should include some of these elements. So there is no way we can say there is learning without these basic elements. So learning theorists in general agree that in order for learning to occur, certain basic elements must be present. So issue about motivation, cues, response, and reinforcement. So there are some level of motivation that would encourage somebody to learn. So regardless of the grade, so if the person gets an A, it will tell you the level of motivation the person was having, and that resulted in for him to get that particular grade. That is motivation. And the same way, the level of motivation the consumer will have will also tell the grade or the kind of product he or she will also buy. So if somebody is motivated, the motivation of the person is very high, the person would be able to have the zeal to learn a lot about that particular product. But if the motivation is very low, the person will not probably take it into consideration that why should I waste my time be going to look at let's say the previews of customers and all that when I can actually use that time to do something beneficial to my life. So it depends on the level of motivation the person actually possess. Then cues. So cues can be verbal, can be non-verbal. So they are the various signals and actually responses and reinforcement. Now learning, behavioral learning, theories, behavioral learning theories or theories, behavioral learning theories. So please take one of the theories out there. So it is learning theory. Behavioral learning are sometimes referred as stimulus response theories. So theories, behavioral learning theory, what do you call it? So please take this one out. It's not supposed to be there. So theories, behavioral learning is also referred to as stimulus response theories. So this is because they are based on the premise that observable responses to specific external stimuli signal that learning has taken place. So behavioral learning is basically, I'm talking about the fact that there are certain premises or there are certain observations that actually responds to specific external stimulus, and that will actually depict that learning has taken place. So if you want to see a consumer level of learning, it will tell you the behavior the person will actually portray and if the external stimuli signals. Now, the basic concept from classical conditioning. So basically, we have two concepts. We have the classical conditioning and we have the instrumental conditioning. And under the classical conditioning, we have what you call the repetition. We have the stimulus generalization. We have the stimulus discrimination. So repetition basically talk about the rate at which you do something repetitively. So the rate at which you continue to do something. That is the element or part of the classical conditioning. So they are saying that there are certain consumers that they have the behavior in terms of the classical school of thoughts that they do something repetitively. And because of that, they tend to learn on that. For example, those that learn on the job, if you are to take it in the context of employees, there are some people they learn experiences because they are always doing something. They are always doing something. And we have stimulus generalization. People also generate stimulus. And we have stimulus discrimination. There are certain people they learn based on discrimination. So they buy something, people criticize it, and because of that, they learn not to buy the thing again, or they learn to make careful selection in attempt of buying a particular product. Then we have reinforcement of behavior. So reinforcement of behavior, Skinner distinguished two types of reinforcement. In other words, reward that influence the likelihood that a response will be repeated. So we have the positive reinforcement, we have negative reinforcement. And the concept of reinforcement basically is talking about the return to repeat a particular action or respond to a particular thing in the second form. So there are several things that will cause somebody to respond in a repetitive manner. So we have the positive reinforcement, we have a negative reinforcement. So the positive reinforcement is saying that there are certain consumers, unless you trigger them, you motivate them, you tell them that when they do this, when they buy this, they will get this. So that kind of enthusiasm will be there. So that is positivity. So they are motivated to do that because you are giving them or you are telling them something that will make them happy. And so if you are even taking it in the context of, let's say, learning, in terms of students, there are certain students, if you don't give them awards, and that is why there are certain initiatives or there are certain organizations or, let's say, schools that they organize award ceremony. So they want that, they think that that ceremony motivates certain categories of students to learn more. And there are certain categories of students who, regardless of the amount you give them, regardless of the publicity in terms of letting everybody know that this is the best student and all that, whatever, to even demoralize them to learn because they sometimes, and based on individual differences. So there are certain people to, you need to actually use negative words or negative actions to trigger them to repeat a particular thing. That is the negative reinforcement. So there are certain people you tell them when they come they visit your shop, you tell them that next week I'm increasing my thing. Oh. It's not something pleasant, but because of the word of next week or the sentence that next week you increase your thing, it will actually initiate the person to buy more or buy what he or she doesn't want to even buy at that moment. So in conclusion, we have looked at the behavioral learning, we have talked about the classical theory, the classical conditioning, and the instrumental conditioning. And where under the classical conditioning, we talked about repetition, we talked about the reinforcement, and then all that. Okay, so that is all for this part. Thank you.